Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for coming together to immerse ourselves in this rich body of wisdom we call Torah. We're going to read through the English translation of our weekly portion, which is Vayera. It's in the book of Genesis, chapter 18, beginning with verse 1. And then I'll share with you a focus study about it, and then we will have our collaborative conversation about it. If you'd like to participate in the blessing, giving thanks for this moment, please feel free to join me. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asot divrei Torah. Thank you, God, for the opportunity to immerse ourselves in words, deeds, and relationships of Torah. I'll share with you the opening verses, and then I'll invite others to have an opportunity to read as well. Adonai appeared to him by the terebinths of Mamre. He was sitting at the entrance of the tent as the day grew hot. Looking up, he saw 3 men standing near him. As soon as he saw them, he ran from the entrance of the tent to greet them. And bowing to the ground, he said, "My lords, if it please you, do not go on past your servant. Let a little water be brought. Bathe your feet and recline under the tree. And let me fetch a morsel of bread that you may refresh yourselves. Then go on, seeing that you have come your servant's way." They replied, "Do as you have said." Abraham hastened into the tent to Sarah and said, "Quick, 3 seahs of choice flour, knead and make cakes." Then Abraham ran to the herd, took a calf, tender and choice, and gave it to a servant boy who hastened to prepare it. He took curds and milk and the calf that had been prepared and set these before them. And he waited on them under the tree as they ate. And Margot, would you like to read? We're now at verse 9.
Yes, thank you. They said to him, "Where is your wife Sarah?" And he replied, "There, in the tent." Then one said, "I will return to you next year, and your wife Sarah shall have a son." Sarah was listening at the entrance of the tent, which was behind them. Now Abraham and Sarah were old, advanced in years. Sarah had stopped having the periods of women, and Sarah laughed to herself, saying, "Now that I am withered, am I to have the enjoyment with my husband? So old?" And then the Lord said to Abraham, "Why did Sarah laugh, saying, shall I in truth have a child, old as I am?" Old as then Sarah said to Abraham, "Why did Sarah laugh? So old as I am. Is anything too wondrous for a child old as I am?"
Is anything too wondrous for the Lord? Yeah.
Oh, I keep skipping lines. I'm sorry. "Shall I in truth for a child old as I am? Is anything too wondrous for the Lord? I will return to you at the same session next year, and Sarah shall have a son." And Sarah had lied, saying, "I did not laugh," for she was frightened. But he replied, "You did laugh."
Oh, thank you so much, Margot. Let me invite David and Susan if you'd like to continue at verse 16.
Thank you. The men went up from there and gazed down upon Sodom, Abraham going along with them to send them off. Adonai then thought, "Should I hide from Abraham what I am doing? Yet Abraham is certain to become a great and populous nation, and through him all the nations of the earth shall be blessed. For I have selected him so that he may teach his children and those who come after him to keep the way of Adonai, doing what is right and just, so that Adonai may fulfill for Abraham all that has been promised him." Adonai then said, "The outcry in Sodom and Gomorrah, how great it is, and their crime. How grave it is. Let me go down and determine whether they are wreaking havoc in equal measure to the shrieking that is coming to me. If not, I will know. Go.
And the people turned from there and went to Sodom. But Abraham was still standing before Hashem, and Abraham came over and said, "Will you also annihilate the virtuous with the wicked? Maybe there are 50 virtuous people within the city. Will you also annihilate and not sustain the place for the 50 virtuous who are in it? Far be it from you to do such a thing, to kill virtuous with wicked. And it will be the same for the virtuous and the wicked. Far be it from you. Will the judge of all the earth not do justice?" And Hashem said, "If I find in Sodom 50 virtuous people, then I'll sustain the whole place for their sake." And Abraham answered, and he said, "Here, I've undertaken to speak to my Lord, and I'm dust and ashes. Maybe the 50 virtuous people will be short by 5. Would you destroy the whole city for the 5? And God said, "I won't destroy if I find 45 there." And he went on to speak to him and said, "Maybe 40 will be found there." And God said, "I won't do it for the sake of 40. And he said, "May my Lord not be angry, and let me speak. Maybe 30 will be found there." And God said, "I won't do it if I find 30 there." And Abraham said, "Here, I've undertaken to speak to my Lord. Maybe 20 will be found there." And God said, "I won't destroy for the sake of the 20. And Abraham said, "May the Lord not be angry, and let me speak just this one time. Maybe 10 will be found there." And God said, "I won't destroy for the sake of the 10. And when he had finished speaking to Abraham, and Abraham went back to his place.
Thank you both so much. And June, would you like to read? We're at the start of chapter 19.
Thank you, Rabbi. The 2 angels arrived in Sodom in the evening, as Lot was sitting in the gate of Sodom. When Lot saw them, he rose to greet them, and bowing low with his face to the ground, he said, "Please, my lords, turn aside to your servant's house to spend the night, and bathe your feet. Then you may be on your way early." But they said, "No, we will spend the night in the square." But he urged them strongly, so they turned his way and entered his house. He prepared a feast for them and baked unleavened bread, and they ate. They had not yet lain down when the townspeople, the men of Sodom, young and old, all the people to the last man, gathered about the house. And they shouted to Lot and said to him, "Where are the men who came to you tonight? Bring them out to us, that we may be intimate with them." So Lot went out to them to the entrance, shut the door behind him, and said, "I beg you, my friends, do not commit such a wrong. Look, I have 2 daughters who have not known a man. Let me bring them out to you, and you may do to them as you please. But do not do anything to these men, since they have come under the shelter of my roof." But they said, "Stand back. The fellow," they said, "came here as an alien, and already he acts the ruler. Now we will deal worse with you than with them." And they pressed hard against the person of Lot and moved forward to break the door. But the men stretched out their hands and pulled Lot into the house with them and shut the door. And the people who were at the entrance of the house, young and old, they struck with blinding light, so that they were helpless to find the entrance.
Oh, June, thank you. Dave Levin, would you like to read? We're at verse 12.
Okay. Then the agent said to Lot, whom else have you here? Sons-in-law, your sons and daughters, or anyone else that you have in the city? Bring them out of the place. For we are about to destroy this place, because the outcry against them before God has become so great that God has sent us to destroy it. So Lot went out and spoke to his sons-in-law who had married his daughters and said, Up, get out of this place, for God is about to destroy the city. But he seemed to his son-in-law as one who jests. As dawn broke, the messengers urged Lot on, saying, Take up your wife and your two remaining daughters, lest you be swept away because of the iniquity of the city. Still he delayed, so the agents seized his hand and the hands of his wife and his two daughters in God's mercy on him, and brought him out and left him outside the city. When they had brought them outside, one said, Flee for your life. Do not look behind you. Do not stop anywhere in the plain. Flee to the hills, lest you be swept away. But Lot said to them, Oh no, my lord, you have been so gracious to your servant and have already shown me so much kindness in order to save my life, but I cannot flee to the hills, lest the disaster overtake me and I die. Look, that town there is near enough to flee to. It is such a little place. Let me flee there. It is such a little place, and let my life be saved. He replied, Very well, I will grant you this favor too, and I will not annihilate the town of which you have spoken. Hurry, flee there, for I cannot do anything until you arrive there. Hence the town came to be called Zoar.
Oh, thank you, Dave. Jim, would you like to read? We're at verse 23.
Thank you, Rabbi. As the sun rose upon the earth and Lot entered Zoar, the Adonai rained upon Sodom and Gomorrah sulfurous fire from Adonai out of heaven. He annihilated those cities and the entire plain, and all the inhabitants of the cities and the vegetation of the ground. Lot's wife looked back, and she thereupon turned into a pillar of salt. Next morning, Abraham hurried to the place where he had stood before Adonai, and looking down toward Sodom and Gomorrah and all the land of the plain, he saw the smoke of the land rising like the smoke of a kiln. Thus it was that when God destroyed the cities of the plain and annihilated the cities where Lot dwelt, God was mindful of Abraham and removed Lot from the midst of the upheaval. Lot went up from Zoar and settled in the hill country with his two daughters, for he was afraid to dwell in Zoar. And he and his two daughters lived in a cave. And the older one said to the younger, Our father is old, and there is not a man on earth to consort with us in the way of all the world. Come, let us make our father drink wine, and let us lie with him, that we may maintain life through our father. That night they made their father drink wine. The older one went in and lay with her father. He did not know when she lay down or when she rose. The next day the older one said to the younger, See, I lay with father last night. Let us make him drink wine tonight also, and you go and lie with him, that he may maintain life through our father. That night also they made their father drink wine, and the younger one went and lay with him. He did not know when she lay down or when she rose. Thus the two daughters of Lot came to be with child by their father. The older one bore a son and named him Moab. He is the father of the Moabites of today. And the younger also bore a son, and she called him Ben Ami. He is the father of the Ammonites of today.
Thank you so much. June, we're now at the start of chapter 20, if you'd like to read a little bit. And you'll need to unmute.
Rabbi, you asking me to read?
Yes, June. Yeah.
Abraham journeyed from there to the region of the Negeb and settled between Kadesh and Shute. While he was sojourning in Gerar, Abraham said of Sarah his wife, "She is my sister." So King Abimelech of Gerar had Sarah brought to him. But God came to Abimelech in a dream by night and said to him, "You are to die because of the woman that you have taken, for she is a married woman." Now Abimelech had not approached her. He said, "O Lord, will you slay people even though innocent?" He himself said to me, "She is my sister." And she also said, "He is my brother." When I did this, my heart was blameless and my hands were clean. And God said to him in the dream, "I knew that you did this with a blameless heart, and so I kept you from sinning against me. That was why I did not let you touch her. Therefore, restore the man's wife, since he is a prophet. He will intercede for you to save your life. If you fail to restore her, know that you shall die, you and all that are yours." Early next morning, Abimelech called his servants and told them all that had happened, and the men were greatly frightened. Then Abimelech summoned Abraham and said to him, "What have you done to us? What wrong have I done that you bring so great a guilt upon me and my kingdom? You have done to me things that ought not to be done." "What then," Abimelech demanded of Abraham, "was your purpose in doing this thing?" "I thought," said Abraham, "surely there is no fear of God in this place, and they will kill me because of my wife. And besides, she is in truth my sister, my father's daughter, though not my mother's, and she became my wife. So when God made me wander from my father's house, I said to her, 'Let this be the kindness that you shall do to me. Whatever place we come to, say there of me, he is my brother.' Abimelech took sheep and oxen and male and female slaves and gave them to Abraham, and he restored his wife Sarah to him. And Abimelech said, 'Here, my land is before you. Settle wherever you please.' And to Sarah he said, 'I herewith give your brother 1,000 pieces of silver. This will serve you as vindication before all who are with you, and you are cleared before everyone.' Abraham then prayed to God, and God healed Abimelech and his wife and his slave girls, so that they bore children. For the Lord had closed fast every womb of the household of Abimelech because of Sarah, the wife of Abraham.
Thank you so much, June. And let's see, Mark Levinstein, would you like to read? We're at the start of chapter 21.
Thank you, Rabbi. The Lord took note of Sarah as he had promised, and the Lord did for Sarah as he had spoken. Sarah conceived and bore a son to Abraham in his old age, at the set time of which God had spoken. Abraham gave his newborn son, whom Sarah had borne him, the name Isaac. And when Isaac was 8 days old, Abraham circumcised him, as God had commanded him. Now Abraham was 100 years old when his son Isaac was born to him. Sarah said, "God has brought me laughter. Everyone who hears will laugh with me." And she added, excuse me, page is stuck. There we go, where my fingers are. Who would have said to Abraham that Sarah would suckle children? Yet I have borne a son in his old age. The child grew up and was weaned, and Abraham held a great feast on the day that Isaac was weaned. Sarah saw the son whom Hagar the Egyptian had borne to Abraham playing. She said to Abraham, "Cast out that slave woman and her son, for the son of that slave shall not share in the inheritance with my son Isaac." The matter distressed Abraham greatly, for it concerned a son of his. But God said to Abraham, do not be distressed over the boy or your slave. Whatever Sarah tells you, do as she says, for it is through Isaac that offspring shall be continued for you. As for the son of the slave woman, I will make a nation of him too, for he is your seed.
Thank you. Thank you. And let me invite Catherine. Would you like to read? We're at this chapter 21, verse 14.
Thank you, Rabbi. Early next morning, Abraham took some bread and a skin of water and gave them to Hagar. He placed them over her shoulder, together with the child, and sent her away. And she wandered about in the wilderness of Beersheba. When the water was gone from the skin, she left the child under one of the bushes and went and sat down at a distance, a bow shot away, for she thought, let me not look on as the child dies. And sitting thus afar, she burst into tears. God heard the cry of the boy, and an angel of God called to Hagar from heaven and said to her, what troubles you, Hagar? Fear not, for God has heeded the cry of the boy where he is. Come, lift up the boy and hold him by the hand, for I will make a great nation of him. Then God opened her eyes, and she saw a well of water. She went and filled the skin with water and let the boy drink. God was with the boy, and he grew up. He dwelt in the wilderness and became a bowman. He lived in the wilderness of Paran, and his mother got a wife for him from the land of Egypt.
Thank you, Catherine. Thank you so much. Rose, we're at verse 22, if you'd like to read a little bit.
Okay, thank you, Rabbi. I'm unmuted, correct?
Yes.
Okay. At that time, Abimelech and Phicol, chief of his troops, said to Abraham, God is with you in everything that you do. Therefore, swear to me here by God that you will not deal falsely with me or with my kith and kin, but will deal with me and with the land in which you have sojourned as loyally as I have dealt with you. And Abraham said, I swear it. Then Abraham reproached Abimelech for the well of water which the servants of Abimelech had seized. But Abimelech said, I do not know who did this. You shall not tell me, you did not tell me, nor have heard of it until today. Abraham took sheep and oxen and gave them to Abimelech, and the two of them made a pact. Abraham then set 7 ewes of the flock by themselves. And Abimelech said to Abraham, what means these 7 ewes which you have set apart? He replied, you are to accept these 7 ewes as proof that I dug this well. Hence that place was called Beersheba, for the two of them swore an oath. When they had concluded the pact at Beersheba, Abimelech and Phicol, chief of his troops, departed and returned to the land of the Philistines. Abraham planted a tamarisk at Beersheba and invoked there the name of Hashem, the everlasting God. And Abraham resided in the lands of the Philistines a long time.
Thank you, Rose, so much. Justin, Lynn, would you like to read a little bit? We're at the start of chapter 22 now.
Rabbi, see if we can get to the next chapter. Good.
And it came to pass after these things that Hashem tested Abraham and said to him, Abraham, and he said, here I am. And he said, please take your son, your only one whom you love, yea, Yitzhak, and go away to the land of Moriah and bring him up there for a burnt offering on one of the mountains of which I will tell you. And Abraham rose early in the morning, and he saddled his donkey, and he took his 2 young men with him, and Yitzhak his son. And he split wood for a burnt offering, and he arose and went to the place of which Hashem had told him. And on the 3rd day, Abraham lifted up his eyes and saw the place from afar. And Abraham said to his young men, stay here with the donkey, and I and the lad will go yonder, and we will prostrate ourselves and return to you. And Abraham took the wood for the burnt offering, and he placed it upon his son Yitzhak. And he took into his hand the fire and the knife. And they both went together. And Yitzhak spoke to Abraham his father, and he said, "My father." And he said, "Here I am, my son." And he said, "Here are the fire and the wood, but where is the lamb for the burnt offering?" And Abraham said, "God will provide for himself the lamb for the burnt offering, my son." And they both went together, and they came to the place of which God had spoken to him. And Abraham built the altar there and arranged the wood. And he found Yitzhak his son and placed him on the altar upon the wood. And Abraham stretched forth his hand and took the knife to slaughter his son. And an angel of Hashem called to him from heaven and said, "Abraham, Abraham." And he said, "Here I am." And he said, "Do not stretch forth your hand to the lad, nor do the slightest thing to him, for now I know that you are a God-fearing man, and you did not withhold your son, your only one, from me."
And Abraham lifted up his eyes, and he saw, and lo, there was a ram, and after that it was caught in a tree by its horns. And Abraham went and took the ram and offered it up as a burnt offering instead of his son. And Abraham named that place, "The Lord will see," as it is said to this day, "On the mountain, the Lord will be seen." And an angel of the Lord called to Abraham a second time from heaven, and he said, "By myself have I sworn, says the Lord, that because you've done this thing, and you did not withhold your son, your only one, that I will surely bless you. I will greatly multiply your seed as the stars in the heavens and as the sand that's on the sea shore. And your descendants will inherit the cities of their enemies. And through your children, and through your children shall be blessed all the nations of the world, because you hearken to my voice. And Abraham returned to his young men, and they arose and went together to Beersheba, and Abraham remained in Beersheba. And it came to pass after these matters that it was told to Abraham, saying, "Behold, Milcah, she also bore sons to Nahor your brother. Uz his firstborn, and Buz his brother, and Kemuel the father of Aram." You read.
And Kesed and Hazo and Pildash and Jidlaph and Bethuel. And Bethuel begot Rebekah. These 8 did Milcah bear to Nahor, Abraham's brother. And his concubine, whose name was Reumah, had also given birth to Teba and Gaham and Tahash and Makkah.
Thank you, and thank you, everyone. That's our entire Torah portion for the week. I'd like to share with you a focus study about it, and then we'll have our collective collaborative conversation about this week's portion. I so much appreciate, first of all, everyone's participating in this reading, because hearing you read, I recognize how much the verb and the image and the notion of seeing, being seen, lifting up eyes, how often that is a motif that runs throughout this week's Torah portion. And of course, the name of our Torah portion, Vayera, is based on the verb to see. And indeed, this year when I was reading and studying our Torah, this week's Torah portion, I was attracted greatly to this very first word, Vayera, which gives the name for our week's Torah portion. As I said, it is based upon the verb to see. It's in a rather unusual particular form of the verb. It's in what we call the nifal form of the verb. And the nifal form of the verb usually indicates a passive kind of activity, or a self-reflexive kind of activity. So how to deal with this notion about taking the verb to see and then rendering it in either a passive form or a self-reflexive form is kind of an interesting exercise that I pondered. So it might either be translated as God was seen, or God made God's self to see or be seen. In any case, traditionally it gets translated as appeared. And so in addition to the kind of unusual nature of the verb form here, the actual opening few lines of whatever this appearance is also intriguing, because it says God appeared to Abraham, and then it next says Abraham looks up. But when Abraham looks up, it is not Adonai that Abraham sees, it is these three men who are crossing through the wilderness, and Abraham jumps up and welcomes them into his tent and provides hospitality to them. So it's all quite interesting. He sees God, but or an appearance makes its way known to Abraham of God, but what he sees are three human beings. And instead of attending first to this initial appearance, apparently, of God, Abraham attends to the presence of these three human beings. So, in any case, whatever the nature of this appearance is that happens in the opening verse, it causes Abraham to respond by providing hospitality to three men who are crossing the desert here. Welcomes them into his home, into his tent, provides food for them, makes sure they can wash, and provides a wonderful, wonderful meal for them, and then ready to send them on their way. And once they go on their way, the very next series of events that happens is that Abraham engages in a bit of debate with God about whether Sodom and Gomorrah should be destroyed. And as we read, Abraham kind of bargains with God. Well, what if there's 40 people who are innocent? Would you destroy the whole city? And eventually bargains them down and says, what if there are 10 people who are innocent? You're going to destroy the entire place because of 10 innocent people? And God acknowledges, no, if there are 10, then I won't destroy it. So this initial appearance that somehow makes itself known to Abraham results in these two activities. One, extraordinary hospitality to strangers, and two, advocating for justice on behalf of people he has yet to even meet. So this notion about these appearances, which is either one appearance or multiple appearances, or different appearances that are somehow superimposed on one another, got me to thinking about imagining a work of art in which there are different experiences, different visages, different memories, different encounters arising in the course of a work of art. And so I'm sharing with you this work of art by the Dadaist Francis Picabia, Medea. And for the most part, Picabia was a Dadaist who created canvases like the other Dadaists who were highly critical of European culture right after the First World War. They felt that the established culture had reached its fulfillment in the horror of World War I. And so in place of the science and the reason and rationality that was the hallmark of the late 19th and early 20th century, which the Dadaists say, well, this is what it's produced. Tens of millions of people dead. They engaged in a kind of anti-rational, if you will, a kind of mockery of all of that culture. But there was a 5-year period from about 1927 to 1932 when Picabia changed the way he was painting, and he engaged in what's known as his series of transparencies. And what he would do in this 5-year period, he would take several translucent images and pile them on top of one another on the canvas so that there were layers of images on the canvas, and almost creating a kind of three-dimensional effect. And that's what this image here, Medea, is. It's one of his transparencies. And although the word transparency is used to describe this series that he produced in this 5-year period, in particular with this one, I have to say, there's nothing particularly, at least thematically, transparent. There are so many layers of stories going on. There are so many layers of different styles that are going on. Because when we look at this, we know the story of Medea essentially connects us with the story of Jason and his pursuit of the golden fleece. And Medea was a sorceress who aided Jason in acquiring the golden fleece, which is actually possessed by her father, a king. And so that's the main story, according to the title, the story of Jason and his pursuit of the golden fleece. But the images that are here have nothing to do with the story of Jason and his pursuit of the golden fleece. We have 3 female figures that are here, and all 3 female figures are figures from paintings that were done by the Renaissance painter Botticelli. And one of them, 2 of the figures are from Botticelli's painting Madonna of the Pomegranate, and a 3rd figure is from his painting Venus and Mars. Now, Madonna of the Pomegranate is a sacred, clearly religious painting. It displays the Virgin Mary holding the baby Jesus, surrounded by angels, and Jesus is holding a pomegranate. And as I understand it in Christian tradition, Jesus holding the pomegranate is a symbol, one of a foreshadowing, if you will, of the passion of Jesus, because of the red representing blood. But of course, in that story, Jesus does not merely die, he is reborn. And so the pomegranate also represents that possibility of birth, rebirth. So that is the kind of the sacred religious painting and setting of the Madonna and the pomegranate. The Venus and Mars by Botticelli is quite different. This is a scene about the goddess Venus and the god Mars The Venus was the goddess of love, Mars is the goddess of warfare, and they are having an illicit affair. Venus was married to Vulcan, the blacksmith, and so the stories, they go off to have this intimate relationship. And in the painting, it shows Mars probably either asleep or drunk, and Venus is quite awake. And so one can maybe surmise that this is a case in which love is kind of triumphant and is the awake force here, whereas Mars is now become somnolent and subdued and asleep. But in any case, in contrast to the kind of, if you will, sacred and holy setting that the Madonna of the pomegranate represents, Venus and Mars represents an illicit relationship. It represents sensuality, and so it's quite a contrast. And so here we have these different styles between a Dadaist and Surrealist, Picabia, who is now providing homage, if you will, to Renaissance painter Botticelli. He has combined these different stories, the story of Jason, Medea, and the pursuit of the Golden Fleece, the story of Jesus and of the passion of Jesus and his death and rebirth, and then the story of these Greek goddesses, that of Venus and Mars. So what to make of all this, that Picabia is kind of bringing all that together? And when I looked at this painting, in addition to which, you can also see in the middle of the painting, there is a ram's head, which is another image that is surfacing in the canvas. The ram's head representing that which Jason is after, the fleece from the ram. And then at the very bottom of the left hand, you'll see some kind of serpent-like creature with its mouth opened and tilted toward the left side of the canvas. And that may well represent the final trial of Jason, of getting past a sleeping dragon in order to acquire the fleece. So when I looked at this painting, I saw all these different images, stories, styles, all of them kind of seeking to arise from this three-dimensionality and gain the attention of the painter, seek a place on the canvas, seek their voice, seek to assert themselves, seek to engage us as viewers. And so to me, this is about, in a sense, what is happening here with this opening of our Torah portion, where there is an appearance that is multiple. There seems to be an appearance of one kind that is associated with God. There is an appearance in that same opening verse about three men. And then, of course, we'll see that notion about what is seen, what is brought before our eyes, occurring throughout our Torah portion. And the same verb that's used in the opening here, Vayera, is going to appear right towards the end with the scene on Mount Moriah with Abraham and Isaac. And we'll come back to that in a moment. But first, I just want to explore a little bit more about this notion of why might all these appearances in the painting, these appearances in our Torah portion, what are they seeking to gain attention and to kind of rise to the surface here? And what I was reading here, what I was seeing here, is that the Torah is telling us something about we are called upon at any given time to reflect upon a situation and to discover within ourselves what forces we're going to tap into to deal with the situation. So I came across this midrash, which is on the study sheet on this backside, an early midrash, which has to do with the creation of the world. Rabbi Shimon said, when God was about to create Adam, the ministering angels split into contending groups. Some said, let Adam be created. Others said, let him not be created. That is why it is written, mercy and truth collided, righteousness and peace clashed. The Holy Blessed One took truth and threw it to the ground. The angel said, Sovereign of the universe, why do you do this? Let truth arise from the ground. Thus it is written, let truth spring up from the earth. This notion that Psalms is sharing with us about truth arising from the ground, it made me think about, really, I thought truth might come down from heaven. But the poetry of our Bible, the Psalms, is telling us, no, what has happened is humanity has been given this power to construct what is true and what is not true. And it's part of the struggle of life to come up with what is right, what is wrong, what is true, and what is not. So I thought also of this poem, this writing from the great Persian Sufi poet Rumi, who wrote this. Your task is not to seek for love, but merely to seek and find all the barriers within yourself that you have built against it and embrace them. And so I read that and I thought, we don't need to seek love. Why don't we need to seek love? Because it's part of who we are. Love is part of our nature. And if we're not expressing it, if we're not experiencing it, it's because we have erected some kind of barriers to it. Okay. So we've identified, I've found barriers to experiencing and knowing love. Now, what do I do with those barriers? Do I crush them? Do I destroy them? Do I overcome them? Rumi says, embrace them. So Rumi's message there seems to be that how we deal with our internal barriers to being a healthy, whole human being affects whether we create greater harmony for ourselves or greater separation for ourselves. So some people, and sometimes all of us at different points will do this, when we are feeling a lack of love, what we try to do is we act out destructively. And Rumi is saying, you need to find why you're not willing to open yourself up. You need to embrace that, and it's in the embracing of that you'll find release. So this last sharing, these last two sharings, I'm now building up more and more as I'm reading the portion. I'm getting deeper into this notion about this superimposition of different appearances that are happening. Is in a sense, these are these different layers within us. In this case, in the narrative, within Abraham, who's exploring them, who's contending with them. And we'll see in this story, in this chapter alone, the way he contends with different inclinations of how to deal with different difficulties that he's facing. And so there's this verse from the prophet Micah, Mi el chamocha, who is like you? And so you can either read that as a question, with the you being a capital Y, who is like you, God, or you can read it as a declarative statement. Who is like you? You, Linda, you, Justin, you, Mark, and God is like you. And so out of that notion that we somehow share a likeness with God, that is where Kabbalah comes in and says, our job is to locate within us that likeness that is God and to try and live that way, to live in accordance with that divine spiritual DNA that is our inheritance. And so I just have here a line from the Kabbalistic text by Rabbi Moshe Cordovero, who lived in the early 16th century. He lived in the Kabbalistic community of Sfat, and he wrote several works, one of which is Tomer Devorah, the palm tree of Deborah. And it is an ethical treatise within the Kabbalistic framework about how to basically live a good and righteous life by emulating divine attributes. And that's why he has one of his opening lines, because he looks at this verse from Micah and locates within this verse from Micah 13 divine attributes. And Cordovero says, it is proper that these 13 attributes, which we will now explain, should also be found in each human being. So that's our goal. Our goal is to dig down into ourselves, locate these attributes, and bring them to the surface and live in accordance with them. So I come to the final commentary here, which is listed as number 2 on the sheet, because this is where the verb to see, which opened up our Torah portion, is going to come towards the conclusion of our Torah portion as well. It is also in the nifal form, except this time it's in the future tense. And this is where, after Abraham has brought Isaac up onto the mountaintop and bound him, and then raised a knife over him, and then the text says, an angel says, do not lay your hand upon the boy. And so one way of reading the text, of course, is that Abraham was intent upon slaying his son Isaac in accordance with what he had received as instructions from God, and that he was restrained only by a voice, a divine voice calling out to him, don't do that. But there's an early midrash that looks very closely at the text and says, why does it say, don't lay your hand upon the boy? Why didn't it say, don't strike the boy with the knife? And the midrash looks at that, and what it imagines is that Abraham is looking into the eyes of his son Isaac, and tears are pouring down out of Abraham's eyes. And those tears dissolve the knife, so that when the angel says, don't lay your hand upon the boy, it's because the knife is no longer there. Abraham's compassion and love for his son has dissolved the knife. And so it's in response to all of that Abraham says, this was an experience. This was an experience that you can all have. He names the site of where this happened for him, Adonai Yireh. You too can have an appearance of the divine that will cause you to act with love and compassion and a sense of caring justice. And so the power of appearances, I think, as I read it this year, has to do with the surfacing and the struggling and the discovery of all these voices within us who are trying to teach us something. And if we listen and discover the divine voice within us, then we too will have had an appearance that will cause us to act with love and compassion and caring justice. I'd love to know what you thought, what you experienced as we went through this week's Torah portion. So Mark Thompson, I see you've got your hand up. Please share.
I would love, first I have to preface my remarks by just thanking everyone for their reading, and especially Linda and Justin. Sometimes when you read it, I'm breathless. I just hang on every word. You really make it come alive. I sometimes wish you would record the entire 5 books of Moses. I'd love to hear your reading. You're really wonderful. So thank you. Anyway, Rabbi, your reading of Adonai Yireh as God will cause God's self to appear internally through compassion and justice. You know, it reminded me a little of Spinoza's view of the divine as immanent in all thought and actions. So we read in Genesis 18, God appears as an interlocutor. He's having a conversation with Abraham, and Abraham wins. But in Genesis 22, God is silent. So I guess the question I would have would be, could that silence signify a transition? And maybe you've already suggested this, as an external revelation to the inner manifestation of the divine, a moment where Abraham no longer hears God, but instead embodies God's presence.
You know, the one way of reading all of Torah is that it's a story about the evolution of the human psyche, the evolution of the human psyche to become a fully developed human being, a fully actualized human being. And that's very much within the dimensionality certain of, I think, the Hasidic tradition, which is to have us attend to the interiority of the divine rather than the exteriority of the divine. And we'll see as we go through this that there is eventually, yes, this as a narrative describing this transference of responsibility and to from the outside to a calling from within, I guess, a sense of responsibility, and the whole Exodus journey is seen as preparing the Israelite people on a narrative sense from no longer being coddled and by an external force known as God, and preparing them to assume their responsibility for running a place called the Promised Land. But on a more of a psychological level, which is where the Hasidic approach really shines, it's also read as a story for each of us growing up from being taken care of by someone outside of us to then becoming a fully responsible human being for our own actions. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So, Richard here, and then we'll call Rose and Catherine. Yeah.
Just a couple of little things I did notice in there. It says, everybody's your bra. Everybody's your brother. Everybody's your sibling. Treat everybody as part of the same clan that you are, part of your descendants, but whatever it is. And I've had the thought that the pomegranate, you know, is pretty ripe in Judaism.
Yep.
It has all the number in it of all the do's and don'ts, and it's also on the priest's costumes. But talking about the failure of love and not attending to what is in you that's making you resist it, I would call that loss of faith. And I think that's what happened to Moses at the rock. And that's what this is again telling us. That can be seen. You can see yourself doing that. You can see love is the basis of everything. Just open your eyes and treat everyone as your brother.
Wow. Thank you.
Or bro.
Thank you, bro. And you got me thinking about the pomegranate. So in Greek culture, as I understand it, it was a symbol of not just fertility, but it was used in certain rituals as more of a sexual metaphor or symbol. And so if you were attracted to someone, you might throw a pomegranate into their lap as an indication that you wanted to that you were sexually interested in that person. And so now, and then think of the way it's dealt with in these other two cultures that we've touched upon. In the Christian tradition, as I understand it, the pomegranate represents what's called the Passion of Jesus, which is his not only his suffering and his death, but also his resurrection. And so that notion that the pomegranate there is representing not sexuality, but something that is now spirituality, that has been at a different level. And in Judaism, we say that the pomegranate is now has an analogy to the mitzvot, because we say a pomegranate has as many seeds as there are mitzvot. So somehow the pomegranate now is kind of taking this, what in the Greek pagan culture represents this sensuality, sexuality, and those urges. And in Judaism and Christianity, they're being retrained or recast to represent either a sense of faith and resurrection, or if you want, in the Jewish tradition, a sense of mitzvot and the rules of daily common behavior. So kind of interesting way to think.
And all those seeds
Yeah.
that generate children
Yeah.
are kind of connected here.
Nice. Okay. And let me call upon Rose and then Catherine.
Thank you, Rabbi. I'm again going with that seeing and looking analogy. And, you see both Hagar and Avraham at the Akedah, where they're in what initially appears to be an insoluble problem. Both their children are going to die, but by different mechanisms. And, but once they lift up their eyes, well, in the phrase about Hagar, Hashem opens her eyes.
Yeah.
And and then she sees the solution to the problem. Whereas Abraham looks up. Well, first he looks up to the mountain, to the mountain itself, and sees where the sacrifice is going to be. And then he looks up again and sees the ram is the way out of his problem. But the other person who looks that we're forgetting about, because he doesn't make much of an appearance in this story, is Lot's wife. Because she doesn't look up, she doesn't have her eyes open, she looks back. She gazes at, I think it was Tabet, which more is like put your eyes on or face or look at something. And she looks to the past that was bad, and she's paralyzed by it. she becomes ossified. She becomes petrified. So depending on how we look and what we're looking at and what we do with it, it can either get you out of a tough situation or throw you back into it.
Good.
Nice. And really nice to bring all that material together. I was so grateful. And thank you for bringing us back to the ram that Abraham finds. And I had not thought this until you mentioned Abraham and the ram. And I thought, I'm looking back at the painting, Maccabe's painting, where there's a ram. And so, oh, okay. So maybe Maccabi is brought the ram there because of Jason and the golden fleece. But who knows? Maybe Maccabi was aware of this story of Mount Moriah, Abraham and Isaac, and he put the ram in there for that reason, that there's something that the ram represents a resolution to some kind of crisis within the community. I don't know.
No, I think that there's a lot of overlap and different symbols in the Mediterranean. I was just in Greece, and I run the gift shop at Shari Torah, and I saw the gift shop of the hotel little wall hangings of pomegranates in different colors. So I got some for the gift shop. They also had the evil eye things, but I don't like evil eye.
Okay. I'm so glad. I'm glad you had this great trip. Let me call Catherine, please share with us.
Okay, I'd like to build a little bit on what Rose said. It's occurred to me. We have 3 cases of appearances that are deceptive in a way. And there's a lot at stake there because God has given his word to Abraham that he will multiply many times. And yet in each of these instances, we come close to seeing that not happen. The first case was Sarah passing as a sister and possibly consorting with Abimelech, or what his name is. So conceivably, she could have born a child to the wrong man. And the second case, we have Hagar with the first son. And if she had given in to that vision, the vision that she refuses of seeing her son perish, then we wouldn't have had much longevity for Hagar's son. And if Abraham had given in to this idea that Isaac, look, he figures as a sacrificial being. And that's what he sees at first. And if he hadn't struggled with that and looked beyond that to see the ram, then we wouldn't have had Isaac either. So I felt that we came very close to losing this possibility.
You know, go ahead.
No, that's it.
Well, when your last sentence there about Abraham seeing the ram, what I'm reminded is that in the Hebrew, actually, it says something. It's a little confusing, but there's something about the ram actually being behind Abraham.
Yeah.
And so, what does that mean? That the ram is something he overlooked? Is the ram representing something he overlooked that he should have noticed prior? And so it is fascinating, all this language in here, in this Torah portion about seeing. And as Rose mentioned, it's Hagar also looks up and sees a well, and
Yeah.
that's the salvation for her and her son. And Abraham looks up and sees not a divine being, but three human beings. And so it's just so rich with what Torah is trying to tell us, perhaps, about that maybe what we're looking for is actually always right in front of us. And that in times of crisis, if we are living in accordance with a healthy approach to life, we will see what we need to see. And seeing what we need to see will lead not only to our salvation, but perhaps to the blessing of others. So, thank you so much. Yeah, go ahead. You want to say some more? Yeah.
Yeah, about the painting. Um, at first, I confess that I was kind of repulsed by this painting. It's very disturbing. There are these animal parts sort of confounded with the face of this woman, or these women as manifestations of a woman. And but it's telling us not to cling to any one impression, right? That we shouldn't cling to one impression because there's another impression behind it, or there's something behind it. And that's what I took away from the.
Yeah, I like that too. The fact that there's not just one voice, there's not just one reality, that there are these layers that we have assimilated just in the course of living, and that we sometimes as we need to sort through all of them in order to figure out what in this moment in time is the right layer that will help us get through this moment.
Yeah.
So, thank you for that. Let me just conclude. David and Susan, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So I just find the Abraham scenario is so very interesting. That he starts out, and I believe he's in pain from just having been circumcised, and he goes to great lengths to extend the courtesies and the graciousness to these three men that approach. And it makes sure that their every need is taken care of before they even ask. And then the next time Abraham is trying to get God to agree not to do away with everybody in Sodom if there's even 10 good men, good people. And he's bargaining with God. And then we see, and I'm leaving out the one about the wife, and then we see him starting to sacrifice his son, where we've already been shown that Abraham is full of graciousness and full of love and full of giving and values life. And it's just,
Whiplash.
yeah, kind of whiplash.
Right. So one of the traditional ways of understanding that whole setting is that when Abraham says that he's going to go up there to that place, it is language that's evocative of the promise that God made to Abraham. And so in that sense, there is traditional commentary that reads this episode not as God testing Abraham, but of Abraham testing God. Really? I'm going to see if this God who promised me that I'd be a blessing and a fulfillment, I'm going to see if that God is really one that would want me to kill my son. So in that sense, there's traditional commentary that reads it that way rather than reading it as a God testing Abraham.
Okay.
And let me say, Dave, go ahead, Dave.
Okay, just a thought about Abraham welcoming the strangers. I think that would be a law of the desert. and it's a survival thing. And I'm sure when Abraham left Ur, he stopped at many encampments, was welcome and fed and given all the honors, they say, of being a traveler. And another reason for that is they had a hard time getting the New York Times over there. So you get information on what's going on in the desert. And so those are two reasons why you've got to welcome the stranger in your tent. And this is what Abraham did.
Right. This is the way of the desert.
That's right.
Okay. And Richard here.
I just want to add to that. I agree with you. And I think maybe it was just three guys. But based on what Abraham has just experienced was a flash of faith in recognizing that those three guys are God, as we all are. We have that in us to be able to manifest if we treat one another well.
Yeah.
And we're still learning on that.
Thank you. So let me just conclude. I will bring up that two members of our study community here, Bill Shafton and David Phillips, are, I think, if I'm stating it correctly, David, you can correct me, would like to exchange some emails to have kind of a off Thursday night little conversation going on. David, you want to explain why you were interested in having people's emails if they're willing to share them?
Well, yeah, I was proposing that people's emails be provided unless they want to be private about it. I guess we could also have sidebar conversations on Facebook. I haven't checked that out. But Bill and I had a conversation about last Parsha, don't remember, but it was really interesting. And Rabbi Moskowitz chimed in and opened our minds a little bit. If we were to have group discussions, I think it would enlarge and deepen our experience.
So let's do this. If there's anyone who's part of the group tonight and you would not like to have David and Bill have your emails so they could be in touch with you, let me know that you prefer to keep it just private. Otherwise, next week, I'll go ahead and share the emails, at least of the people that are here tonight, okay? And then we can ask other people as time goes on. Is that okay? So with that, I want to give thanks to everyone for this rich conversation. We've extended our time because people had so many interesting things to say, and I've been enriched by them. And in terms of the power of appearances, I know that the appearances of all of you greatly stir me. They inspire me. They help me to grow. They inform me. And I carry all of you with me as I go through my week. I'm very grateful for that. God bless you all. I look forward to our next gathering. Be well, everyone. Take care. Thank you so much. God bless.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you.